All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Tzadi Mesachas Pesachim. So we left off yesterday at the bottom. We had a statement by the Tanur Rabbanan, which was that was the second one I lied. Basically, it said that he sets aside his Korban Pesach, and in addition, someone has money set aside for a Korban Pesach, and he wants to go ahead and purchase his way to become a member of that Korban Pesach, right? So that money becomes chulin. All right, so that money becomes chulin. And now we're going to see why. So Amar Ula, right? And if you're puzzled why that's the case, because you have mammon, which is hektish, acquiring something which is already set aside as hektish, how does that money become deconsecrated? Usually something becomes deconsecrated, chulin, right, by switching places with something else, which was chulin. In other words, something is hektish, something is chulin, and they sort of switch their kedusha. But if one is kadosh and the other one's kadosh, or both of them are hektish, so how does the chulin come and play? So Amar Ula, v'yitem Rabbi Yishia, Efshar Yodi Chaverim Beveloi Tamat Ahai Milsa. Is that right? So they said, is it possible that one of you Babylonians could explain this to me? This person sets aside his animal for his Korban Pesach, and the other one sets his money aside for the Korban Pesach. So hey, hektish chal hektish. So how can you have hektish come in hektish, right? And all of a sudden the money becomes chulin, right? It doesn't make any sense to me, says Ula, right? Which is what I just explained. So top of the page, Amar Abaye. So now this Gemara sort of goes backwards, right? It sort of says the maskana, right? And then it sort of backs its way into as to what is explaining. So Amar Abaye, so it says Abaye. So now there's a whole Rashi here, which basically gives the background. So he says, right? If Rabbi Oshia did not explain that Gemara or the Mishnah in Tamura, right? There's a Gemara in Tamura over there. There's a halacha. It's called Esnan Zaina, right? Esnan Zaina is basically a man, right? Basically gives a woman, right, as a payment for a zona, as a payment for for harlotry, right? As a zona, he gives her an animal, right? So that animal cannot be brought as an offering. So the question is, what happens if the man gives an animal which was already hektish? So it doesn't do anything. The animal can be offered because it's not considered esnan zona. It's not a payment for zona because it was not his to pay. It was already hektish. And over there, and he uses a pasuk over there to say that in that case you don't need to. So l'chayra, right? That case we're talking about not a standard hektish case, right? We're talking about something with an animal which is sort of his that he gives to her. That nevertheless we need a pasuk to teach us that she can't go ahead and use that as a korban. So the question is, what type of hektish, right, can be owned by somebody, or what kind of hektish can someone have as possession that he still sort of owns it, even though it's hektish? So Amar Abai, so Abai says over there, so Abai says, so if it wasn't for the fact that Rabbi Yishia said that case over there was talking about a case, Manan Zayin al Pischo, right, the person basically went ahead and he says, okay, here's your payment. Your payment is that you can be part of my Korban Pesach, right? You can be part of my Korban Pesach. But Rebbe, and it's according to Rebbe, and we'll soon see this as the understanding of what exactly was Rebbe says. I would have said that case was not talking about a Korban Pesach at all. I would have said it's talking about a case of Bekachi Kalam. The Rebbe said clearly, Damar Kachi Kalam Mamon Bailam Haim. It says over there, I would have said that maybe according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, that when someone sets something aside, let's say as a shlamim, right? Shlamim is your classic case of Kachi Kalam, that it's still a little bit is owned by the owner. It's all not hektish, and therefore, since it's a little bit owned by me, and I pay it as an esnan zona, and I give it as a payment for a zona, right, for a woman, right, to have relations with her, right. So therefore, that makes that since it's partially mine, it makes the korban bad, and therefore she can't go ahead and offer it, right. So I would have said that, but nevertheless, according to Rabbi Yishia, he explained that it goes according to the Lefi Rebbe, who holds that the korban pesach was partly his. But Abai would say, but a Pesach, a person doesn't leave over. A Pesach is completely his, right? In other words, when a person sets aside a Korban Pesach, this is my Korban Pesach, it's completely 100% hektish. However, when it comes to the money, right, that money, a person does the money is not 100% hektish, and therefore the mikara ki mafresh lahu adai tadachim avashus. Therefore, when he sets that money aside, he sets it aside that it could also it's not completely designated as 100% money, and therefore since he still has some rights to it, right? So therefore it's partly chulin. So therefore it makes a little more sense when a person buys in. If you hold that the money is not completely hektish, rather the money is, when he puts it aside, he leaves it a little bit as chulin to basically join somebody else's chabura. The Hal Rebbe, and therefore you can say that our case is talking about Rebbe. And that's the reason why when Ula says, "Hey, can anyone explain this case?" That's the reason why the money becomes chulin when he goes ahead and he registers it, right? So if Dudi had a case, right? Dudi has an animal, and I go ahead and I have money. So even though the animal is completely hektish, but my money that's set aside for Korban Pesach is partially chulin. Therefore, when I give him the money to register along with him, therefore that money basically becomes chulin. Why? Because when it comes to the money, that even though he designates for that, it doesn't become completely hektish. And that case over there, in the case of the Estan Zaina, to call Maikila Rabbi Osha Karebi over there, where Rabbi Osha established it like Rebbe, I don't know. I don't say Rebbe. It can't be Rebbe. Why? The Pesach Lameshayinish, right? Because he holds that by a Korban Pesach, a person doesn't leave it out. He holds that when it comes to the Korban Pesach, a person, if that case is talking about Esnan Zaina, and I used the animal to give her, right, as my Korban Pesach, so therefore that animal is completely hektish, and therefore, since it's completely hektish, right, she doesn't acquire it, and therefore, since she doesn't acquire it, therefore, right, it's not something that she received, from me, right, as a payment, because it wasn't mine to give. So therefore, since it wasn't used as an Esnan Zaina, it would be permitted to use, and we wouldn't need a pasuk. So therefore, that's the distinction. According to that, Abaye disagrees with Abaye in terms of by Korban Pesach. Is a person a shire? Does he leave part of it out? According to Abaye, he does not leave out. It's 100% hektish, and according to Abaye, if he Rebbe, it is. One second. How could you say it's like Rabbi Yossi? We said earlier yesterday, right? Right. We said a person over there in the bottom, in that Tanur bottom, the same case we were talking about, a person sells part of his portion. The next case over there, the safer was, we said yesterday, right? 6 lines at the bottom, it says one who sells his ola or shlamim. Let's say I had ola or shlamim. They say, I don't need it. Let me sell it to somebody else. We said over there, lost of klum, right? The sale was nothing, right? So the sale was nothing. So how could you say that a shlamim, which is kachikalim, remains with the owner? If it remains with the owner, therefore I can go ahead and sell it, right? So how could you say that works? It says loss of klum, right? So therefore it wouldn't go according to Rabbi. And now the Rabbi says over there that the Mishnah over there in Tamura that we said in the case of where it wasn't talking about kachikalim, rather it was the fee Rebbe, right? That he exchanged a zona. Right, he exchanged this animal, right? His Korban Pesach to the zona, right? According to him, since he understands that case like that, it must be that he learns that according to Rebbe that the Korban Pesach is not completely the person, and therefore, if it does give an exchange, that exchange to the zona would be chal, and since it would be chal, therefore the Korban would be no good. And Mahi Rabbi Yosha now. Like I said, it's sort of like out of order. What was this case? Rabbi Yosha, the Tanan, Nasalon Mukdashim Besnena, right? If a person gave a zona, right, as her payment, a hektish, hare elu mutar. Those are mutar, lemizbeach. Why is that? Because since when I gave her over something, right, I didn't give her something that was mine. It was already hektish. So if I give somebody else's something that doesn't belong to me, I don't affect it at all. So therefore, since it was already hektish, it wasn't affected at all. However, let's say it was birds that were not, they were still chulin, they were not made hektish yet. Hare elu isur. If I go ahead and give my birds to her as esnan zaina, they are no longer fit for the mizbeach because they were chulin and therefore they become an aser. However, they want to say shayah b'din. When you have an animal which are a mum, right, postles by an animal. It doesn't. There's no mum when it comes to birds, but when it comes to animals, there are mumin. So therefore, if an animal which can be possible with a mum, and nevertheless we say that the esnan is not the halacha of esnan zone is not chal on it. So birds, which a mum is not paisable, right? Isn't obvious that the halacha of esnan zone or mechir kelev wouldn't apply to it. So Tamalayma, therefore it says l'chol neder, anything that's given to her l'chol neder l'rabos. Sorry, it's just on my throat. L'rabos, there I got. All right, so it says l'rabos is ophos to go ahead and include birds. And so Noam, can you give me a drink? Sorry about this. So therefore it says l'chol neder. The pasuk says over there. Let me just find the pasuk. Right, the pasuk says lo savias nan zayna mechir kelabeis Hashem l'kecha l'chol neder. Right, any neder. So now is anything included, even birds that would be included in that. And the Gemara says, we also say kavachem l'mikdashim me'ata. Maybe you can say the kavachem the other way. But in a case of birds where the mum doesn't passel it, and nevertheless we say esnan mechir chalalei, and nevertheless esnan mechir we say it's chalalei because of the pasuk of the chol neder. So mukdashin shamum paisel behen. So when you have something which is hektish, which a mum does passel it, eino din chesnan mechir chalalei. It isn't obvious that esnan the halachas esnan mechir would be chalalei. So tamalema, therefore it says l'chol neder prat l'neder. It says l'chol neder anything that is neder, which would exclude anything that was already previously hektish. So since there was already previously hektish, it would not be included. So this is the case over there that we were referring to. So Elamiata, because of Rachmana neder. Oh, so you're telling only because the pasuk says neder. But I would have thought, if it wasn't for that, I would have thought that maybe the halacha of esnan would be chalat. So I understand. Ein adam aiser davar sheina shelo. Why do you need a pasuk, right? If something is not mine, I can't go ahead and give something, of Randy's to someone else as a payment, and all of a sudden it becomes theirs. It's not. It's always Randy's. So if something was already hektish, I can't use that as a payment for something else. It doesn't. The status doesn't change. So Rabbi Oshia. So therefore, over there, Rabbi Oshia says, we're talking about a case of where he says he uses the Karim Pesach and he says, okay, I can go ahead and basically include you in my count for my Karim Pesach. And therefore, and according to Rebbe, he holds that the Karim Pesach is not completely hektish. So since it's not completely hektish, maybe it would be Chal Aleya. And my Rebbe, what is this case of? Rebbe, the Tanya, we're going to Raisa. It says, the Pasuk says, Vim Yimait Habayis Miyais Misa. It said, if the house, right, was too small, right, for a seh. What does it mean? That over there, that let's say that they can't have all these, they can't afford anything. So we say over there, in other words, if the house is too small for the seh is too expensive, it's too much, it's too big for the house, then you go ahead and you could support, right? You can bring support from the seh, from the lamb, right? What does it mean to bring support from the lamb? Right? In other words, you can go ahead and you can use it. Use it for items to go ahead. If you can't, the house is too small to afford it. So you can go ahead and sell, right, from the portions of the lamb. Hey, let's sell it out, right? We have some extra kazesim. Sell that out and use that money, those proceeds from the sale, for the support of the achilas Karim Pesach. But however, you can't sell those portions, to get that money to sell the spots for anything else. And Rebbe says, Af michlei mekach, right? You can go ahead. It's chulin, right? You can use that money for even other things. She main low, because if he doesn't have money, then manacher imo apischal v'achigaso u'ma shebiyado chulin, because he holds that any money that comes in from the proceeds basically belongs to him. So Rebbe holds that the money basically can do what he wants with it. The other one says no. If you go ahead and you sell the portions, it's not completely chulin. Rather, you can only use it for the purpose of only purpose for the current Pesach. And because of this, that was the reason why, when Bnei Yisrael knows when you go ahead and you're makdish your current Pesach, you're only doing it for this. You're only doing it for for this purpose, and therefore, it's for the purpose of the current Pesach, and therefore I reserve the rights, right, to sell any portion of the Korban Pesach and use that money for myself. So that's what Rebbe holds, and that was the sheet of Rebbe that we brought down earlier to explain that it's a person who's makdish according to Rabbi Shir, a person who's makdish the animal is not makdish for Korban Pesach is not completely hektish, rather it's also partially his. And Rabbi Zera Chad Omar be'etzim l'tzliyaso. If you want to go ahead and sell the proceeds from having people register and included in Korban Pesach, no one agrees to give the takanasa the Pesach. Kagufa the Pesach dummy. If you want to go ahead and buy it for firewood or for help with roasting the expenses for cooking it, or roasting it, right? Everyone agrees that's considered basically for the purposes of the Korban Pesach. Everyone agrees that would be mutter, right? Ki pligi. When do they argue in terms of what to use the proceeds for? Matzah Mara. When it comes to using Matzah Mara, Rabbanan Savri Hachilach Risi. Rabbanan hold that no, that's considered to be an outside eating, and therefore it's something else. It's not part of the Korban Pesach, and therefore be forbidden. Rabbi Sabir, Kevin Dachshir the Pesach, Gufa the Pesach Damin says no, since you're supposed to eat it together, right? It says Amatzas Amarim Yachluhu, right? Eat it together. So therefore the Matzah and the Mara are included in that. The Chadamar, and the other one, either Rabba or Zera says, but Matzamar also, even when it comes to the case of Matzamar Nami, they also I just got the line right. And V'chadamar, sorry, Matzamar Nami, no one disagrees in that case. That says over there, everyone says eats a Matzamar together. The Kevin, the Machshin, the Pesach Ninu, since they're part of the Korban Pesach, Pesach that was part of the Pesach that was. So keep pligi. When do they argue? They get chaluk to go ahead and buy clothes, they likach talis or something to wear. Rabbanan sarim yois miseh. Amarachmana hachiyul liseh. Rabbanan hold that says over there anything to go ahead and have part of the. In other words, you can go ahead and basically live from the animal, and therefore. It's only something which is shaykh to the animal, and this is not shaykh to the animal. The Rebbe Saber hechiyu atzmecha miseh. You can go ahead and provide for yourself from the set. Will Abaye, and according to Abaye, the Omar Ilav Dukmina Rebbe Aisha Loi V'mana Zaina Al Pischa the Rebbe, and according to Abaye, right, who says if it wasn't for the fact that Rebbe Aisha says that it was Rebbe who holds, and we're talking about a case he left. We're talking about a case of when he was Mana Zaina Al Pischa. And it was according to Rebbe. In other words, that he basically assigned, as we saw earlier, he signed a portion of his Korban Pesach to her. And according to Rebbe, because the Korban Pesach was still his, if it wasn't for the fact that I would have said a case of Kachi Kalam, I would say, don't talk about say it was a case of Korban Pesach, just say it was a case of a Shlamim. Case of a Shlamim, even because it's Kachi Kalam, it's not completely Hashem, it's partially mine. Therefore, if I give it as an Esnan Zona, if I give it as a payment, right, to a Zona, therefore I have basically deconsecrated, or I have disallowed this to be offered as a Korban. But however, my understanding is that at Korban Pesach, a person does not leave it out. In other words, it's 100% hektish. So if it's 100% hektish, what do you mean? We just said earlier, we just said you're allowed to go ahead and sell part of the, I can rent out or sell the portions of the kazesim from my Korban Pesach to use it either to buy firewood or to buy to roast it, or matzah moror, or even according to one opinion, even to go ahead and buy clothes for myself, right? So we see that it's not completely hektish. So how could you say you would have said it's completely hektish, right? If we see over here that it's that it's not completely hektish because people can go ahead and use the proceeds from the register to your own needs. So Ema, don't say over there that Shaman Askein, right? Hikdisha Yisrael Pischayim. Rather, learn over there. Ema Shaman Askein Hikdisha Yisrael most Pischayim. Right? Only the fact that the money wasn't completely hektish, but the animal itself is completely hektish, according to this pshat, and therefore it would not be a kasha on a buyer. Fine. Now Mishnah. Now it's funny to say when you get to a Mishnah, usually the most difficult part when it talks about a zav. And the other types of tuma, it's usually a more difficult part of the shear. Actually, today it's a little easier part. So let's see.
Mishnah.
The Mishnah, the bottom of Tzadi, Amad Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom, it says Zov Sharash De Riyos. So we're going to come to a concept. Let's think about it for 1 second. The rule is like this. The rule is that the Korban Pesach is offered on Erev Pesach. Okay, so let's say it's offered. Let's say it's offered on Friday. Okay, and Friday night is Pesach, right? So you offer it on Friday, right? That's when you makriv it to be eaten on Friday night. Okay, so now there's many halachas when it comes to a tuma that all you have to do is in the evening you're tahor, right? So it says the Mishnah, zav shtei rios. If you have a zav who ate basically a person saw 1 or 2 times, and therefore he's tameh that day, right? He goes to the mikvah, right? And then at night, he's tahor. So at night, in theory, he can go ahead and eat the Korban Pesach. So Zav Sharash Rios, Sheikhin Love Bishvi, right? You go ahead and this is the 7th day. He's only tummy for 7 days, but he doesn't have to bring any korban. He doesn't have 8th day. After the 7th, so on the 7th day is Erev Pesach, you can check the Korban Pesach for him, and then he can eat it at night, and therefore he's good because he comes tahor then. And Rosh Chodesh, if he sees 3, now when you see 3, you have to wait 7 days, and the 8th day you have to bring karbanos. So if you saw 3, you can go ahead and shecht it on the 8th day for him. What's the chiddush? The chiddush is even if he didn't bring his karbanos, right? He's supposed to bring his karbanos. He has all day, all right, to bring his karbanos on the 8th day. So even though he didn't bring it yet, right, which he really should have done in the morning, but you can still shecht the Korban Pesach, assuming he's going to go ahead and shecht and bring his karbanos, and therefore make him fit to go ahead and eat the Korban Pesach that evening. Similarly, Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, you have a woman during her Ziva period, after the days, the 11 days after 7, right, from basically 8 to 18, right, during those days after she had her period. So if basically she saw blood that day, she becomes tahor at night. She goes, right, so it says, if she's a Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, Sheikh Dileh, once again, she was a Shomer Yom Keneged Yom on that day. She saw blood, so therefore you can still go ahead and shech the Korban Pesach because we assume at night she'll be fit to eat. And b'sheni Shalai, if she saw 2 days in a row, Shahais Rasa Shnei Yom says b'sheni Shalai Rasa shech b'sheni Shalai. Then you go ahead and shech on her 2nd day, right? It's no problem here tonight. Rasa Shnei Yamim. If she sees 2 days, then sheich dinaleh b'shlishi. Then you wait on the 3rd day, or even though she's tamei, but at night she'll become tahira. Then you can go ahead and shech the Korban Pesach for her at that time. The hazava, and a zava, a woman who became a zava, who basically saw 3 days in a row during her ziva period, day through 8 through 18, one of those 11 days. She saw 3 days in a row. Then she's completely tamei, and she basically has to bring a korban on her 8th day. Then sheich dinaleh b'shmini. Then even though she didn't bring her korban on the 8th day, right, we assume she will at some point, and therefore making her fit to eat the Korban Pesach that evening. Fine, that was the Mishnah. Now let's see the Gemara. Right? So we basically spoke about these 2 people, right? You can go ahead and do a shechter zrika at Tful Yom. A Tful Yom is a person who, as we mentioned, like a zav who only saw 1 or 2 times, that he becomes tamei, right? He becomes tamei middle of the day, goes to the mikveh that day, he becomes tahor at night. All right, so that's called a tful yom, right? He went to he was tovel, he dipped in the mikvah during the day, right? But he's not completely tahor yet. He has to wait till night. All right, so we can go ahead and check for a person who went to the mikvah that day and is waiting for night, or somebody's mechus kippurim, or someone who is on their 8th day. They have to bring the korban. Once they bring their korban, they're 100% glat, but they didn't bring the korban yet. Nevertheless, they're lacking their korban, right? So we go ahead and we shecht for them because we assume that they'll go ahead and bring it. That's what we said till now. Now, the ain, turn the page, the ain shecht them zerkin al tamei sheretz. But however, we do not go ahead and shecht for somebody or throw blood for somebody who is a matame tumas sheretz, right? Someone who's matame tumas sheretz, touched it, dead sheretz, and normally he goes to the mikvah and it becomes tar that evening. So the Gemara wants to know. All right, actually, we'll get to the machlokes. Ula says, sheikh the mizarek al tamei sheretz. He says, no, I disagree. Sheretz just like the others, right? You become tar at night, so too, just like a shomer yom keneged yom, right? Or a zav, a guy who only saw 1 or 2 times, right? So we said earlier, right? You shech for him during the day and he goes sees the nights. Rav. So ma'ishna tful yom. What's the reason why it's tful yom, where you're allowed to go ahead and shech on his behalf to chazi lorta? Because the nights will be okay. So tumasheretz nami chazi lorta. I understand. A person who's matame tumasheretz can also be fit at night to eat the Korban Pesach. Why can't you shech it? I can shech the Korban Pesach on his behalf. So mechusar tefila, because he didn't go to the mikveh yet. So therefore he's tamei tumasheretz. Tful yom nami mechusar erev shemesh. What do you mean? Mechusar tful yom. The sun's not there yet, so he says no. Shimsha mimela arba. Right, the sun goes by itself. The sun will set by itself, but we're worried about that he might not go to the mikveh. So mechusar kaparim nami. Ha mechusar kapara. What understand? What we said earlier, a person who's missing his karbanos, we assume he's going to go ahead and bring his karban. So Gemara says, no, Shekina biyado. So we're talking about a case where the birds are in his hand. We know he's going to go ahead and bring the karbanos. So therefore we can check them. But it's full yom. Who says he's going to the mikvah? So Gemara says, once again, Tommy Sheretz Nami. What's the problem with Tommy Sheretz? Hare mikvah lefanav. The mikvah's right in front of him. So Dila Pasha, perhaps he'll err and he'll forget to do it. So he won't go to the mikvah. So Nami, right? Dila Pasha. Even though he has the birds, maybe he'll forget to do it. So Gemara says, no. Kigon demasrinu lebezdin. He gives over the birds to Bezdin. Like Rav Shmaya, the Omar, he says the chazaka in Bezdin shel kohanim aimdim misham ad sheichlu ma'is shofros. Right? There's a chazaka that when the Bezdin has a job of kohanim, when the kohanim has a responsibility to go ahead and bring the karbanos, they're going to go ahead and bring all of them. So therefore, you can be rest assured that the kohanim will bring the korban on the 8th day. However, we cannot. The distinction is, according to Rav, that you cannot be rest assured that the person will go to the mikvah, and therefore we don't allow a person who is mitame tumas sheretz to go ahead and shecht for him because he might not go to the mikvah. So the Gemara says, wait, it's only a gzer d'Rabbanan because he might not do it. I will Rav midoraisa mirsei chazi Rabbanan hu degazi be. But according to him, so midoraisa, you're saying that really he's okay, right? Really, you can go ahead and shecht for a person mitame tumas sheretz, right? But it's only midorabanan. There the geyser. So alama merav mitame nechamehem b'sheretz. Why did Rav say earlier, right? Remember, we had the case of half of Bnei Yisrael is Tameh, half of Bnei Yisrael is not. So what do? 50-50. So I know, have one person become a Tameh Tumas Sheretz. Now you have a majority, and everyone brings Betuma, right? That's how you solve the problem. But wait, if Midoraisa, a person is Tameh Tumas Sheretz, he's still fit to bring the Korban Pesach. So how do we allow all Bnei Yisrael to be Matami Tumas Sheretz? It sounds like, from what Rav answered, that it's really a Deraisa. And that deraisa, you don't go ahead and shecht on behalf of a person who's matami tumas sheretz, right? So Ella l'Rav, really, you're right. Deraisa nami lechazi. Really, a person matami tumas sheretz during the day on erev Pesach. He's also not fit. We don't show the Korban Pesach on his behalf. The pasuk says ish kiyat tamei lenefesh. But says the person becomes tamei over there. So milo askin the chal shvi shelo lios erev Pesach. So the pasuk is talking about a person who's tamei, right? And therefore he's pushed out the Pesach Sheni. Are we not talking about a person who is his 7th day? Now, a person who's matame, right, from Tumas Mace, right, on his 7th day is basically like the same status as a person who touches a dead sheretz. Both of them, that night, they'll become Tahor. So nevertheless, in that night, even though it was the 7th day, right, but he was still Tame, we said, the Hainu Tumas Sheretz, which is the same as Tumas Sheretz. The pasuk says over there, Nidchi, they get pushed off, right? Wait till Pesach Sheni. So what do you see? Somebody who is on the 7th day of Tumas Mace or Tumas Sheretz, the pasuk, right, has to go ahead and wait till Pesach Sheni. So you see, he's not fit. So he says, who says that's the case of the pasuk? He goes like Rabbi Yisrael Damar. Tamei Meis Mitzvah. The pasuk in the Torah we're talking about when they were Tamei on erev Pesach, they were Matame Tumas Meis. Meis Mitzvah. It was a Meis Mitzvah. Shachal Shishal Enli Yoser Pesach. Shnaz the pasuk says V'lo Yechlu Asas Pesach Bayomahu. It says because they couldn't bring the Korban Pesach on that day. It says Bayomahu. The Yechlu Asas. So the Machar Yechlu Asas. It sounds like on that day they could, but the next day they could, in theory, right? So it sounds like. What day is it when today you can't, but tomorrow you could? That must be the 7th day, the last day. And there, the Torah says, the Torah over there says that it's pushed off. Fine. Tanan. So Zov, Shiro, now we're going to get back to what we discussed in our Mishnah. Now, so it says Tanan. Zav Shiro, Shtei Riyos. So Zav who saw 2 times, and therefore he's only tummy. Then he all right. So Shekel Bashvi. So he's tummy for 7 days, but he doesn't bring any karbanos. So Shekel Bashvi, you go on this. If it's the 7 days or Pesach, you can go ahead and check for him. Why? My la We're not talking about a case of where he didn't go to the mikveh yet, right? The Shmami no, and let's learn from here that Sheikh and Vizerk now tummy sheretz, and therefore it's the same thing as a person with tummy sheretz, just like a person has the 7th day. Right, he has to go to the mikvah still, and nevertheless, our Mishnah says you can go ahead and check the Korban Pesach. So too, a person touches a sheretz, no different than a zav on his 7th day, and he has to go to the mikvah and he should wait a night, right? And therefore, it's all the same. So we say it's no different than Tumas Sheretz, and therefore we see over here that you go ahead and check on behalf of the person who's talking to a sheretz, even if he didn't go to the mikvah. Our answer is low. No, we're talking about a case did tavil. He actually did already go to the mikvah. So you tell him, if you went to the mikvah and obviously you can eat at night because that's once the sun goes down. So my kamashlan, what's a chiddush? The Gemara says no. But even though it's missing the sun going down, that is not an issue. So how can I miss that? It's also logical to say why. Maybe Tani Seifa, but the Seifa says Rosh Loish Riyos Sheikhna B'Shmini. If a person saw 3 Riyos and therefore he was a Zav, a full-fledged Zav, which means he has to wait till the 8th day to bring his karbanos. And now his 8th day, he has to bring karbanos, falls out on Erev Pesach. So if we're talking about the case of when the Reish was talking about the Zav who saw 2 times, so he shecht for him, and he went to the mikvah, and over there it says in the 7th day, right? He went to the mikvah on the 7th day, and therefore you shech the korban pesach for it. Istrich, therefore we need a reish and a seifa. Why? Over there, since on the 7th day he already went to the mikvah, he's not missing any sort of maisa. It's just he's waiting for the sun to go down. But a person who saw 3 times and b'shmini, and we're talking about his 8th day, the mechusar maisa, he's missing a maisa, right? Which is mechusar kapara, right? He's missing his karbanos. Low, maybe I would say so. We don't check the korban pesach for him. So Kamash Malan comes to teach us the afagad the mechusar kapara sheichtin v'zarkin aleh. Even though, right, that the person is, he's missing he didn't bring his karbanos, therefore the chiddush of the seifa is to say that we trust him to bring his karbanos later, and therefore we shech it. Elia Marta, but if you say Rosh de Ria is b'shvi deloy tava, but rather if you're saying that the ratio was talking about right on the 7th day where he did not go to the mikveh yet, then we still go ahead and shech it. So Rosh shlish b'shvi lamali, right? If he saw 3 times his 8th day, he didn't bring his karbanos yet. Why is it any difference? Why didn't he teach you that case? Hashti yesh lamar. Now you can say Rosh de Ria is b'shvi lo tavo tama demalihu shach v'zakin aleh. So a person who saw 7. Right, a person who saw it twice never has to wait 7 days, right? So he didn't go to the mikveh yet. Nevertheless, right, and he's still tummy because he didn't go to the mikveh. We nevertheless be shecht for him. So Rosh Loish B'Shmini. So a person who's on his 8th day, he actually is tahor. He's just as being his karbanos. He doesn't have kapara, but he's actually tahor, right? Because he went to the mikveh, right? The tava le b'shvi, the klisha tuma, lo kol sheken the shachtim zakin. It's obvious because since he went to the mikveh the day before, so on the day he's tahor. Certainly we should shech the korban pesach. So why do you need the seifa? Elav, rather not, must be Shmamino, Rosh de Rios B'Shvi Shachtin Allah Ditava. Rather not, maybe we're talking about, it must be the case of the 7th day, that which we say we shech on the 7th day. It must be talking about a case where he was already Tava. So Gemara says, no, maybe that's not the case. Really, he didn't go to the mikvah on the 7th day. If he didn't go to the mikvah on the 7th day, and we say we shecht for him, so what's the chiddush of the 8th day that we shecht for him? The person's already tower. The person the 7th day didn't go to the mikvah, he was tamei. So why did you bring the seifa to teach us the 8th day? So he says, no. Since on the 7th day, that since it's up to him to go ahead and become tower, i.e., he's the one who goes to the mikvah, therefore, you can go ahead and we can show the korban pesach. But when it comes to shmini, when it's not up to him, but up to the kohanim to go ahead and bring the korban, maybe I'd say the kohanim will make a mistake. Kamash belong to Rav Shmaya. Therefore, it comes to be like Rav Shmaya, who says we trust the kohanim. Fine, let's just try and get to the Mishnah. I know we're running a little late, but it goes quick. And we say in the case of a zava, is a woman, right, who saw. We go ahead and shech her. She saw 3 times. During your Ziva, she has to wait 7 days. On the 8th day, she brings her karbanos. Now, Tani Tam coming to Ravada Barava, Bahazava, Sheikhtin Allah, B'Shvi Shala. A Zava, we shech her on the 7th, right? In Amarle, Zava B'Shvi Shala Michazia. I understand why you're talking about the 7th. Again, she fits. Afilu Mandem Sheikhtin Azurk and Tamei Sheretz, even according to the opinion, who holds that you shech for a person who's Tamei Sheretz, right? Hani Mili Tamei Sheretz. That's the only person who's Tamei Sheretz. The Chazil Orta, because at night he becomes able to eat, right? Because when he's Tamei Sheretz, when the sun goes down, he's good to eat. However, when it comes to a woman, right, who is a zava, who has to on her 8th day to bring karbanos, she can't eat that night. She can't eat until the next day. So if her 7th day, if her 8th day is on Pesach, therefore the 8th night, i.e. Leil Seder, right, she can't eat kachim yet. If she can't eat kachim yet, how are you checking the korban pesach on her behalf? So Gemara says you're right. That which we said you shech for her zava doesn't mean on her 7th day, because her 7th day she's not fit to eat kachim until the 8th day, which is already after Leil Seder. It's the first day of Pesach. It's not, which is after the first night, right? So rather, we're talking about a case. We mean it's her 8th day. You go ahead and you shech on her behalf. So Gemara says, "Pshita, it's obvious." So Gemara says, "No." You say no, like we said before. Maybe since she was missing karbanos, she didn't bring it yet. Maybe we don't shech. So Kamash we do. And Ravina Omar Nida Tanakame. We're actually talking about a nida. Now, a nida, when she becomes tame, she's tame for 7 days, and at night, right, she becomes tahira. Va'anida sheichna b'shvi. We'll explain. We're talking about a nida, and we also shech her on her 7th day. What do you mean? So I'm late. Nida kashvi b'shvi michazia. A woman on the 7th day, is she fit? So even according to the opinion, we saw a person who was a tamei sheretz. You can go ahead and check for him because that night he'll be okay. Nida l'orta the shvi who the tavla, and Nida has to go to the mikveh at night, right? She doesn't go to the mikveh during the day and waits till the 7th night, right? Rather, right, or till after the night, right? She goes to the mikveh at night l'orta the shvi who the tavla. So ad shmida of the harav shemesh, right? Only until the 8th day, right? Once the sun goes down, right? So she's not fit, right? So it's not just harav shemesh. She also goes to the mikveh at night. So ella ema b'shmini. Rather say that case the Nida was talking about on her 8th day. Now, if it was the 8th day, then we go ahead and we bring it on her behalf. So Gemara says if it's 8th day, pshit, that's obvious. She's completely tahira. She already waited her her days, right? She already went to the mikveh. So what's the problem? So pshita hashtem azov the mechasi kapara sheichtem v'zarkin la b'shmini nida the mechasi kapara tzich l'meimah the shachtim v'zarkin la. So as we just said, right, if we do it for a zava who has to bring a korban on the 8th day, right, we shech for her. So Anida, which doesn't have to be a korban, she's completely good. What's the chiddush there? So the Gemara says no. Nida it's sheichla. You need a nida. Why? Hakamash malan b'shmini in b'shvila. Because after we said the 8th day we shech for her is to really teach you that on the 7th day, her 7th day, you do not. All those who are chayv to go ahead and do tefillah normally do their tefillah b'yom. They're tefillah during the day, except for a nida v'yoled tefillah b'layla. Except for a nida or a woman who gives birth, right? Those they go at night. So therefore, since at night, right, it's after the 7th day, but it's really into the night. It's right the night of the 8th. Therefore, that's too late to go ahead and check on their behalf. The time is learned by so you might think that a nida goes to the mikvah on her 7th day. Therefore, it says Shivas Yamin Tiabidinasa. 7 days she'll be in her nida. Tiabidinasa shall kol shiva. Means over there that she's a nida for a complete 7 days and not any earlier. And how do you know by yoledes? The yoledes itkash l'nida. And yoledes, the pasuk of it says they're written together, and therefore we learn a yoledes or nida that both of them, if it's their 7th day, then they are not included in this Korban Pesach. We do not shecht on their behalf. All right, shkayach. It was a lot today. It was difficult, but we made it through. Shkayach, everybody. So Sunday, Mirz Hashem, regular time. Everyone have a wonderful Shabbos and a good day. And remember to mark your parking spot.
There's a minion by Zadie Marilis tonight at 5:10. Should be a quick minion in his house. Whoever wants.
I'm sensing a lot of enthusiasm here.
Woo!